My name is Joanna Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of the City College Partnership, which is under the auspices of the Division for Government, Community, and Cultural Affairs. This event, Advocacy for Immigrant and Muslim Rights, was put together by a partnership, a host of individual organizations that truly care about the well-being of not just our city college community, but understanding that we're part of a bigger piece of the puzzle. So this conversation is not just about our CCNY students, faculty, and staff, but it's about our community overall in New York City, New York State, and the rest of the US. I do want to quickly list, because they did such amazing work in supporting this event, the organizations and offices that helped us. First of all, the Colin Powell School was very supportive of this event, as well as the Division of Student Affairs, more specifically, the International Student Scholar Services. Thank you, Maribel and Angelique. We also have the Graduate Student Services Council and USG, undergraduate student government. And of course, we have our panelists. Our organizations here are represented. We have Angela Fernandez from North Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights. We have next to her, we have Naz from CUNY Clear, and we will hear more about those organizations. We also have we have Yatsiri from DREAMS. She's a student here, City College, from the DREAM team. And we have Afaf, the Executive Director of CARE. And we have Jose Perez from Latino Justice. And forgive me if I don't say your last names, but I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to introduce yourselves and speak a little bit more about your organization. So here's the format, and we're gonna do it rather quickly. We're going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves and what their organization does. We've shared with them some of the questions and concerns that we were able to solicit from students, faculty, and students so that they can answer it in their responses or understand more context when they do get questions. But know that you will leave here and we will do, to the best of our ability, we will make sure that your questions are answered. So it'll definitely be a very focused Q&A time for the audience here. And so without further ado, I would like to start at the end and ask Angela to introduce herself.
Sure, thank you. Should I use the mic?
If you have to.
Okay.
Yes, you know what?
For the video?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So we're using the mic, and this is why. If I don't use the mic, you can still hear me clearly. But we want to make sure that we acknowledge the importance of this conversation, and that we acknowledge the time, the critical time that we are in our nation's history and what's going on with our neighbors and with ourselves and our family members. So we are actually taping, I don't know if you noticed when you signed in and even at the door, we are taping this event. And that's why we have the mic, so that with clarity, the questions and the comments and the remarks can be picked up. So when it's time for the Q&A, we'll be passing around the mic. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I guess the mic is on. My name is Angela Fernandez. I am the Executive Director of Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights. I'm also the supervising attorney. And I just want to applaud the President, Vincent Boudreau, and Joanna Garcia for creating the space for this very important conversation. And I'm sure we're going to be having many more of these. Our organization, Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights, was founded a little over 35 years ago by community activists and professionals who had identified a lack of culturally competent immigration-related legal services for the influx of immigrants that were coming in at that time, which were primarily from the Dominican Republic. The organization, though, at the time of its founding and continues today to serve everyone. Does not matter what country, it doesn't matter what part of the United States you're from. It shifted and added a component while it was primarily focused on legal services and providing free ESL and citizenship classes, in 1996, there was an immigration reform called ERA that did a number of things. One of them was it recategorized many misdemeanors and violations and were redefined as aggravated felonies. What that did was it placed, or actually it removed the discretion that immigration judges had in deportation cases. Now, our organization is the canary in the coal mine. So what does that mean? When, before sending coal mine workers into the coal mine, they would send a canary in. If the canary came back, it was safe to send in the workers. If it didn't come back because it was killed by some fumes, then they knew not to send in. Our organization is the canary in the coal mine. And unfortunately, we are the ones who live immediately when the canary doesn't come back in. We have, after 1996, we had green card holding residents applying for citizenship, going in for their interview, expecting to become citizens, to only then find themselves be arrested, placed in detention, and started in deportation proceedings. That was thanks to the 1996 law. And why? Because they had a prior conviction. But many of them had convictions that were so minor, they didn't even spend time in jail. So that's when we added the advocacy component. We have done a tremendous amount of advocacy, some wins, some losses, but we have been shaping that space between immigration and criminal law, and that is critical to understanding what is happening today and how the enforcement is stepping up using this term criminality. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, and thanks again to the President and Joanna for organizing us. So my name is Naz Ahmed. I'm a staff attorney at the CLEAR Project. We're housed at CUNY School of Law. The law school is in Long Island City now. It used to be out in Flushing near Queens College. And we work with communities that are targeted by so-called national security law enforcement practices. So what that means is that our clients are mostly people who get approached for questioning by the FBI or the NYPD. They show up at their door and ask them questions about what mosque they go to, who their friends are, do you watch religious lectures online, who are your favorite religious lecturers. We also work with people who have travel-related difficulties because they're on a watch list. So people who are on the no-fly list, people who have to go through secondary screening every time they fly internationally or even domestically. And then we also help people who have long delays in their applications for immigration benefits. So like Angela was saying, our clients will apply for citizenship and they won't get an interview for 2 or 3 years, or they'll have an interview and there's no decision for 3 or 4 years. Or they've applied for a family member who's overseas and that visa process is taking too long. And we do Know Your Rights workshops on these issues. So we do workshops on what to do if law enforcement comes to your door, how to handle questioning and searches at the airport. And we do this all free of charge. So I'll hand this off
now. Hello everyone, my name is Jet Siri. Again, just like everyone else, thank you President and thank you Joanna for giving us the space. As I said, my name is Jet Siri. I'm a student here at CCNY, and I'm also the co-founder of the City College Dream Team. We're a club here on campus. We meet weekly, and it started out as we wanted to have like a safe space for undocumented students or for anybody that was affected by immigration to have somewhere to go. Because the reality is that many of these students are the first in their family to go to college. They don't know how to navigate the system. Sometimes they might be afraid to approach a certain office here on campus because they are afraid that they're going to be asked about their status. So we wanted to, on top of all of that, immigration does take a toll, an emotional toll on everyone. So we also wanted to provide not only the resources that we know about here on campus when regarding to scholarships or how to deal with certain offices, but also we wanted to just have that support emotionally and know that they can go somewhere and they can sort of debrief and let out all those emotions that they have. Because we have had a couple of our students that have come to one of our meetings and they're like, this is the first time that I'm speaking about my status. This is the first time that I have the space to actually feel free and know that I won't be judged for my status. And not only that, but we also work with a lot of students that maybe their parents are undocumented, but they're US citizens, and so they know the struggle. And along the way, we have been learning a lot. Well, this is a student-led club, so along the way, we're learning as we're going. We had had a couple of Know Your Rights trainings in the past, but we're looking forward to like bring those back to campus. And we're trying to have an event with public safety in the upcoming weeks. Well, we really appreciate the space, and we have a couple of our members here in the audience. Thank you for coming, and yeah, thank you.
Greetings of peace to everyone, or as we say in Arabic, salam alaikum. My name is Afaf Nasher. I am an attorney and also the executive director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. Just a heads up, the flyer, which my office didn't catch, said Arabic Islamic Relations. That's incorrect. So if you guys need to check us out, it's the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR New York, C-A-I-R New York. We're a civil rights organization. We're national. We have about 30 offices across the country. CAIR New York is your New York chapter here, and we've been around for 2.5 decades approximately. And what we do is civil rights work and advocacy, mainly catering to the Muslim American community. I say mainly because we understand as Muslims that an injustice to one is an injustice to every single one of us, and so we will not turn our backs or close our doors on anyone. So anyone who has a civil rights issue, a discrimination issue, and we're pretty broad. We do hate crimes, for example. We do school rights and bullying. We do law enforcement issues that Naz, and sometimes we often work together with CUNY Clear on law enforcement issues. We do workplace discrimination, so if there's discrimination in the hiring process or once you're on the job. And we also deal with a lot of surveillance issues, religious profiling issues, and now, of course, the travel ban. Although our specialty is not immigration, the travel ban has sort of put us there because it is a discriminatory policy on its face and beyond. And so we are, with our coalition organizations, are fighting back, both in the courts, but also as a grassroots organization, organizing in the streets as well. So we look forward to all of your participation. We thank the school for putting this together. Yassiri, great organization. Really happy that the school has you guys as a resource. And please use us as a resource as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jose Perez from Latino Justice PearlDeaf. I'm the Deputy General Counsel and Legal Director. Some of you may have heard of an organization called the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. We were founded in 1972, so this is our 45th year of fighting for the civil rights of the Latino community. We changed our name about 8-9 years ago. That the issues that we have taken up as a civil rights legal defense fund are those that impact all Latinos. A big part of what we've done post 9/11 has been the issue of immigrants' rights, fighting back against anti-immigrant ordinances in places like Hazleton, Pennsylvania, Riverside, New Jersey, Farmers Branch, Texas, those that attempted to impose restrictions or obligations upon local officials about housing and employment. And we were, as lawyers, what do? We brought lawsuits under the Constitution to challenge these ordinances, and only the federal government has the ability to regulate or address immigration issues. We saw here again locally back in 2006 what we called home raids, ICE immigration enforcement going into homes purportedly executing administrative immigration warrants. But again, the manner in which they did this, an immigration warrant is what we call civil in nature. It only permits a consensual entry. And what you often see is that these ICE agents engage in paramilitary forcible entries. So again, we brought a lawsuit against ICE back in 2007. to challenge those procedures, which resulted in some reforms to the process. But again, we're very disturbed and alarmed to hear again that ICE agents, whether rogue or part of an official policy, are again engaging in such tactics. So I'm here to really talk about some of the civil rights work that we do. Again, we do immigrants' rights, we do voting rights, redistricting. The greatest right of really any citizen is the right to vote. So again, as Latinos become more and more the majority, there seem to be more efforts to restrict our access to be able to exercise our right to vote. We do economic justice, working on behalf particularly immigrant workers who are denied, who are not being paid fair wages, minimum wage, overtime, or being harassed because of race, national origin, or gender on the job. We also do criminal justice. We're one of the organizations that had sued the NYPD about stop and frisk, and that case was recently a tentative settlement. Final settlement was only filed last month. Hopefully that will be the end of that chapter. We look forward to, if the judge approves the final settlement, working with the NYPD and ensuring that, again, that the proper training protocols and policies are being implemented. The other part of what Latino Justice does is that we try to open up the doors of the legal academy and the legal profession to young Latinos, and other persons of color. Diversity in the legal profession is still lacking. Has gotten somewhat better, but still challenging. So I see this. I was introduced someone in the back who remembered me more than I remembered him. But part of what we do, we have an education division that we do a lot of what's called pre-law pipeline programming. Typically, all our services are free. We have a program called Lawbound. I brought some flyers. It's a free program. The next one will be in August. It gives you the nuts and bolts of everything you need to do or know in terms of how to successfully apply to law school. Jesus, stand up. He was in our class last summer, so you had a good time, right? All right. The other thing, part of our mission again is to open the doors, create more lawyers, but also we realize not everybody needs to be a lawyer, right? There's a lot of lawyers out there, but never more so when we saw what was happening at the airports. That for once I felt proud to be a lawyer. That the number of private lawyers or non-immigration lawyers, everybody rushed to the airports to stand up, as you were saying, for the rights of all. Because an injustice against one is an injustice against all. They come for somebody today, they're going to come for us tomorrow. So we want to not just increase more lawyers, but also civil rights leaders and advocates. So you don't all have to go to law school, but you can become advocates or spokespersons for your community. So we're there to do this. I also want to thank Kevin Varela, who's here, who's a second-year law student at CUNY Law School, so a fellow CUNY person who helped prepare and did some of the research for me today. I'm going to be talking to you about sanctuary cities. And again, the last thing I want to mention is my connection with CUNY goes very deeply. I think my claim to fame over the last few years is that I was, if you ever heard of a young man by the name of Cesar Vargas, a dreamer who graduated from CUNY Law School a few years ago. I was Cesar's lawyer who fought successfully to have him get his law license and be admitted. So that's my claim to fame now. I'm Cesar's lawyer. Former lawyer now. He's now an official admitted lawyer, and he's somebody, again, expanding the boundary, speaking up for what's right. And again, so if Cesar can do this, any of you can do this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to ask, first of all, let me acknowledge two people that came in after we did our initial introductions. I want to acknowledge the great leadership without whom we wouldn't be able to have this kind of event, and whose support was very instrumental in putting this together, and that is Vice President Witherspoon. Thank you. And we have also been joined by former council member Robert Jackson, who has been a very long-standing supporter of City College and CUNY overall. So I'm gonna ask the panelists a few questions, and we're just gonna do it for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna dedicate half an hour, at least half an hour, and making sure that additional questions from the audience are asked of our panelists. And I'll start with Afa Care. Afa, can you speak a little bit about the state initiatives to counter threats from our current administration in terms of the policies and agenda that we're listening to every day?
Sure. So as Jose mentioned, you don't have to be an attorney to be an advocate, and so that's something that I definitely want to encourage, because there are various initiatives that you can become a part of. Besides, there have been various initiatives on the city level, and then city coalitions, and then statewide. And one of those right here, a coalition of cities, although it's not state, about 36 cities across the United States, including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Minnesota, filed legal papers. And what they did was they asked for an extension in court for the original stay that was challenged with the ACLU. So that is one example on cities going across their own cities and understanding that immigrants are play such a vibrant role in not just the everyday life, but the economic sustenance of the city, that they want to be proactive and pushing through various litigation channels to sort of also go against this ban. But beyond coalition of cities, right here in New York State, there is something right now called the Liberty Act. Essentially what happened is you all heard about sanctuary cities, right? And I think somebody else is going to speak about that, so I won't get too much into it. But the point of that is that it was taken to a broader level on the state level through an act that was that was presented to the New York State Assembly and passed, and now is before the Senate. And it's called the New York State Liberty Act, and it contains 3 provisions, essentially. One is talks about banning or preventing a registry based on a person's religious identity or national register or your national origin, right? So you've all heard of the Muslim registry, something that unfortunately we had post the 9/11, and something that was commented on and promised during the election cycle. And so the Muslim registry, what it did is it essentially took people again from various countries. Just about all of them except one were Muslim majority countries, and said all males from a certain age have to go and register. And when they registered, it was chaotic because essentially people who wanted to be in compliance with the registration, actually some of them were detained right then and there, and they didn't, thinking they were going in for compliance issues, their families did not see them come home that night. And there is a promise of possibly that happening again. And so the state has taken it on to sort of say, we want to prevent something like that from occurring again, and that is one component of the New York State Liberty Act. The second component of the New York State Liberty Act pertains to the NYC ID, which has been this huge campaign in New York City for people to be able to get ID regardless of your immigration status, right? And what that proposal basically entails is that it prohibits local law, it basically prohibits sharing information that was obtained in the NYC ID program with immigration officials. And then there's another portion of that has to do with the ECPA, which is basically an act which is trying to make it mandatory for law enforcement to have to go get a warrant before they can go through your digital information. And that is huge because we all know what social media means to us. And right now, as it stands, even crossing the border, and then certainly many people in the Muslim community understand this very well. You try to cross a border even from Canada into the United States, and even if you're a US citizen, you're pushed aside for various screenings, and one of the things they've been asking for is your password to your phone and passwords to your social media accounts and your computer. So this is an attempt to try to stifle the over-abuse of this investigative tool being used by federal agents, and saying, no, we actually want a court to give a warrant before law enforcement is able to search through. And then California also has a similar bill. And then just on the other front, and I know you're talking about state initiatives, but even beyond public initiatives, there have been private initiatives too, like there have been various technology giants like Apple and Google and Microsoft, who've also come together and put forth legal papers citing harm to their businesses, because when you stifle immigration, you stifle some of the best minds coming in, especially in the technology field. So there are various initiatives there, both public and private, and in those, again, just to highlight what my brother Jose said, is you all have a role to play in pushing that. With the component of the warrants for digital information, that's going to be up with the city council very soon. You all have a voice, and you all can reach out to your city council members and tell them that you want to see this passed on the local level. CARE plans on taking that then to the state level in the coming months. We're actually trying to push for the entire New York State Liberty Act to be passed through the Senate as well. So whatever you can do as advocates, as organizations on campus, to push that forward and to tell your elected officials, look, we live in this state, we're your constituents, you are servants of the public, and we're telling you that we as members of the public want this, okay?
Thank you so much. I wasn't aware of that whole private piece, and that's very important for all of us to be aware in terms of how we can be supportive. Going along that same thread of the sanctuary cities, Jose, can you speak a little bit about what it means to be a sanctuary city and how that translates into practices for college campuses?
So everybody, Sanctuary Cities has been in the news, I guess, dating back to the campaign, again, where President Trump attacked that. Post-election, again, one of the first executive orders issued in January, the end of January, where, again, President Trump announced that, you know, he would withhold federal funding to those jurisdictions that would not, that are deemed sanctuary cities and don't cooperate with immigration authorities. So what is sanctuary cities? And actually, Kevin did some research for me, and we went back historically. You know, it's something that goes back to medieval times, when there are, I guess, feudal lords and nobles and kings, and people would go to their local church to escape persecution. It kind of was reinvigorated in the 1980s as folks from Central America here in the U.S., again, to escape immigration enforcement tactics or policies, would go to their local churches. So really, it's a historically involving houses of worship or faith and seeking refuge in a church. But legally, and I went to my source, the New York State Attorney General's office, officially Eric Schneiderman said, and again, they issued a report, and again, sanctuary is not a legal term and does not have any fixed or uniform legal definition, but is often used to refer to jurisdictions that limit the role of local law enforcement agencies and officers in the enforcement of federal immigration law. So I think that if you listen to that, what it is that, you know, President Trump says he wants to deport all criminal aliens, immigrants, et cetera. He wants to hire, I don't know, thousands more Border Patrol and ICE agents. He wants to build more jails, prisons to house all these illegal immigrants. He can't do that on his own. What he wants to do is engage with local cities and states, law enforcement and elected officials to do the federal government's dirty work. In essence, like if you have any contact with any type of law enforcement, they should arrest you and detain you so that the immigration officials can do that. And again, so what has happened is that places like New York City, San Francisco, others, counties, cities, towns, villages have said, we are not going to cooperate with the federal government in terms of engaging in immigration enforcement. Local police here, the New York City Police Department, the police commissioner has said, and this goes back a while, that they will not engage in immigration enforcement. There's a concept called community policing. The police are obligated to protect and serve all, not just U.S. citizens, not just LPR or green card holders. Their duty is to engage and protect everyone, irrespective of immigration status. The fact that you're an immigrant and you're a victim of a crime, how likely are you to come forward and report that crime or you witness a crime if the first question from the police officer is, what's your status? Show me your papers. And we have seen this happen, not so much here in the city, but here in New York State, yes, Long Island, Westchester, Hudson Valley, upstate New York, down south, Midwest, this happens frequently, a regular occurrence. So in terms of trying to engage or protect immigrant communities, that many police chiefs across the country have said they will not engage in this. There's a term you might have heard called detainers. That's a big issue, a focal point of this, is what happens is that immigration is notified that someone has been arrested. They may have an immigration warrant or they may not have entered status. Once law enforcement kind of fingerprints you and arrests you and they have your name or your date of birth or your place of birth, basically immigration can determine whether you entered with inspection and have some type of status, or without inspection means you don't have any status and you entered illegally. They then will ask the local law enforcement, the police, the sheriff, the jail, to hold that person for a period of up to 48 hours. So if you get arrested, you go to criminal court, your case is dismissed or you get time served, whoa! If you're an undocumented immigrant, we have a detainer here from ICE, we're going to hold you. And that's what ICE basically asked the local law enforcement. Here in New York City, through advocacy work, through many of the organizations here at this table have forced, and this goes back really actually, goes back to Mayor Giuliani, the dark days. More recently is that New York City basically does not honor detainers unless there are certain designated crimes, typically violent felonies, and after someone has been convicted. The mere fact that you've been arrested should not subject you to a detainer. So again, that's where this whole concept, I know President Boudreaux, and many of the school presidents and chancellors have been asked to address this. I know you issued a statement, I think back in December, because we reviewed it. And again, it's not so much the term sanctuary city. It is the policies and practices that are put into place. President Trump's threat to withhold federal funding, I think there are more brilliant lawyers than I. We've looked at this issue and come that the president's threat is a hollow one. There is legal precedent. The president can't withhold funding for senior citizens or for housing or other things because you're not cooperating with immigration enforcement. I think the same principle would apply to institutions like CUNY that get federal funding for education, that they, his threat to withhold funding for that is not a real threat. It is not a legal threat. He can try, but I think there is legitimate legal grounds to oppose that. It's more the policies here. There already is an existing law. It's called FERPA, the Federal, I have to spell it out, FERPA, Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. Lawyers, we love acronyms, FERPA. So this is a law that already imposes on institutions that receive federal funding, like CUNY, like City College, that they can't release a student's personal information to a request from, say, ICE. We want to know about student XYZ. Unless they have gone to court and gotten a court order or a judicial warrant to get that information, very limited circumstances, they are mandated by law not to turn over that information. If they did, they'd be violating the law and would be subjecting themselves to litigation and liability, which they're not going to do. The other thing is typically you have in the context here on campus, would ICE agents come on campus to look for somebody or arrest somebody engaged in enforcement? ICE has what's called priorities in terms of they respect typically places of worship, schools or campuses, and healthcare facilities. That doesn't mean that they may not try to do that. Just last week in Virginia, there was a church-run shelter. A group of Latinos came out. When they crossed the street, ICE was there waiting to arrest them. So they said, gee, they didn't violate their policy because these gentlemen crossed the street. So they weren't technically on the church shelter. It's playing a little loose with the rules, and that's what we've been seeing a lot going on over the past couple weeks. I think ICE agents, Border Patrol kind of exercising their own initiative. And again, we're still looking into this. Is this an official policy that's going, or are these rogue agents? Either way, they're violating the Constitution and the role agency rules and protections. So it's more, again, it's not likely ICE agents are going to come here, but if they have a court order or warrant, I think as President Boudreaux in his statement dictated, if there's a court order, then I think the university will look at that and determine if they have to comply. They can't deny access. But if an ICE agent's like knocking and your school security guard is there, gee, we're looking, can we come around and look in here and go in these private spaces? They can't do that. They can't do that. So as long as City College and CUNY kind of uphold those principles, I think, again, you can deem this campus, even though not officially a sanctuary place, a safe place. And so those are the things with sanctuary city designations that you really have to be cognizant. It's not the label, it's the policies and practices that are put into effect.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course.
I actually got to go, but our security guards are instructed not to let ICE agents in. ICE agent comes to the door, they'll be sent to our university lawyer. One weak link in this is that we hold the door for people all over the place, right? And so pay attention to who you're holding the door for, because we won't let them in. They have to show ID if they go past the security guard, but they don't if they come up through the plaza. So you see a guy in a suit, looks a little bit like me.
No, ICE agents normally don't dress like us. They wear
they might
jeans.
start.
They don't have a uniform. They wear jeans and T-shirts. They sometimes wear windbreakers or jackets that say ICE Police. What they'll say that they're the police. But again, they have limited authority about what they can do.
And we don't let the police in either. The police comes to our front door, they get referred to our lawyer, we figure out what's going on. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jose. Just serious, since we're speaking so much about sanctuary cities and really what it means to be in a safe place, and you mentioned in your introduction the importance of that other piece, which is well-being services. Is there anything you would like to say in terms of your organization's role in the We Are One and services that are out there for our students to feel safe?
Oh yes. Well, one thing we do have, as I mentioned before, the City College Dream Team, and we try to meet weekly. But as things are going on, we're having various events. But we are always available through like social media or anything like that if someone just needs to get something off their chest. In regards to services here on campus. We do have the counseling center, which provides confidentiality for students that one are dealing with a lot of anxiety or depression, which is something that we have seen a lot because we are affected. It's something that we are dealing with every day. Every day we wake up and it's something else in the news. For our parents, it's something else. Personally, before, you say bye to your parents and you're like, oh, have a good day, be safe, right? But that idea of be safe, now that statement is used to be like, oh, just be safe. You just say it, just being nice. But now it actually means please be safe, So we are living with a lot of anxiety of what's going to happen. Are we going to see our family members at the end of the day? Are they going to be coming home from work, or is something going to happen to us? As Jose mentioned, they are trying to, get through the cracks of when it comes to the legality of things. For instance, we take Dani Vargas, who is a DACA recipient, and she was taken into custody earlier this week because her DACA is expired. I'm a DACA recipient myself, and she was speaking at a press conference, and talking about her fear of deportation, and minutes later she was taken in by ICE. So yeah, we don't know who's next. So it could be me. I can be walking down the street, and after this video is published, like ICE can go look for me or something, So we are dealing with a lot of that stuff. So if you know that you're feeling anxious, that you're feeling depressed, or somebody is going through that, please reach out. A lot of professors here on campus, I'm very proud to say, that are very supportive. So I didn't know about the counseling center until I spoke to a professor, and he actually walked me to the counseling center. And there's also various organizations that do provide a lot of emotional support, such like Atlas DIY, the New York State Youth Leadership Council, and other organizations. I also believe that Make the Road also has some counseling that they provide for their members. When it comes to we are one blog here on campus. It's part of our website now, and they do kind of like break down some of the questions that maybe undocumented students or DACA recipients have, from qualifying for state tuition, financial aid, and also they provide some legal resources. They have, like we have the CUNY Citizenship Now office here located a couple of doors down. The name might be deceiving because it says CUNY Citizenship Now, but they deal with a lot of different cases, from DACA renewals to citizenship. And also, it was mentioned, the whole public-private spaces. So if you guys want to know a little bit more about that, that's also mentioned on that part of the website. And there's a list of like events that are going to be coming up so that we can stay informed, because as we know, things change every single day, and it does get overwhelming when we go on social media and we see something else happened. So we also need to recognize like the boundaries and know that we need to be informed, but also let's not be consumed by fear. But we need to like President Bordeaux before he left, be aware, sort of things like opening the door for someone. So it's important to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, we are students, we are people, and we need to recognize that we need to mentally take care of ourselves, emotionally, physically, but also be aware at the same time.
Thank you, Yasiri. It's very sobering, your words, and to hear from first person experience. what undocumented students go through every day and their families as well. I just want to give a few minutes for the remaining two panelists to say a few words before we pass it over to the audience. Angela, I know that your organization does a great deal of work with DACA students and around that topic. Can you briefly tell us a little bit, and I'm sure we'll hear questions also about that, a little bit what your organization is doing in regards to DACA?
So, so as soon as President Obama signed the executive order that outlined DACA, we immediately found training, got trained, and got ready. That's what we do. That's what our organization does. Again, the whole, kind of canary analogy. And so I'm very proud that we were able to help 400 young adults receive DACA. But that meant we had to screen 3 times that amount to identify people who were eligible. And I have to say that after realizing that the president was going to win, I was the number one group of people that I thought about was the people that we told, it's going to be fine, apply for DACA. Historically, our country, when we do an executive order on immigration, it follows years later with a immigration reform that emulates what that executive order was. And we truly believed that, that the next president, whoever it would be, was going to then push an immigration reform, and we would have these DACA students protected. Now, I have to commend the Dreamers nationwide for their organizing, because thanks to their organizing and the pressure they put on President Obama for him to do the executive order. He didn't do this on his own. He did this because young people sat in his campaign offices the second time that he ran for office. Because of that, and President Trump knows that he cannot revert and change that executive order on DACA. The backlash will be so strong, even to the point where I was listening to a town hall in Arkansas, and individuals who it seemingly had immigrant past from 3 or 4 generations ago were saying, please don't deport the Dreamers. So I think that the support is just so broad-based, but it's also because of the excellent organizing that had been done. But we definitely need to be very vigilant and very careful, because while he isn't going to do right now a change in those executive orders, the executive orders that we have now is about, it gives immigration agents broad latitude. But even if a DACA recipient were to be detained, they at least have a legal protection, and an attorney can fight for their ability to stay in this country. So I think that, get to know your neighbors, get to know your community-based organization, get to know as many people as possible, get to know reporters. Just get to know the media, get to know, those friends of yours that have those crazy Instagram followings, have them know you in case something happens. You can say, someone in your family can say to that friend, you got to put this out on Instagram, because that actually has stopped it's actually stopped deportations, and that's part of the work that we've done, putting community pressure and public advocacy that has stopped some deportations in their tracks.
Thank you, Angela. Naz, I know that CLEAR, and I was really happy to do some research on CUNY CLEAR and see that this is something that was coming out of our CUNY community. You're doing some work in terms of building capacity to really aggressively address the executive orders that continue to come from the White House. You want to speak a little bit about that work?
Sure. So we're at CUNY Law School, and I think there are a few things the week after the executive order was signed, we were at town halls, mosques, many places around the city. I'm still kind of just like running around the city now. I came from City College, actually Academy of the Arts from this morning. I was in a high school class. So we're answering questions. People have a lot of questions about like, what does this mean? Even if they're not from one of the 7 countries, what do the court rulings mean? What's gonna happen? How are they treating people at the airport these days? And we're also, so back in December, we did a Train the Trainers event with the Immigrant Defense Project, who work on that very issue that Angela mentioned. They were created in direct response to the passage of the 1996 Act to cover that overlap of criminal and immigration law. So we did a Train the Trainers event with them, advising people how they can go back into their communities and instruct people on how they can protect themselves and their communities during ICE raids. We're doing another one that will be live streamed at the end of March. If you go to the Immigrant Defense Project's website, you can register for it. It's not just for lawyers. That's, I think, one way. And going out and even just doing it, even just us doing the Know Your Rights workshops in the places that we go to. I was with my colleague at a public school in the Bronx on Tuesday, and we were speaking to a group of parents who come after school for ESL classes. And it was mostly Spanish-speaking parents in the room, but the teachers told us that they also have a significant contingent of parents who speak Arabic, and they thought that, well, they were probably afraid. Like, the mood is so fearful right now that they didn't want to be anywhere near, and they don't trust outsiders. But they said, these parents, they're going to go back and report to the other parents what they learned today, and they're going to ask us to come back. So that is something that I think is really important, is sharing anything and everything about knowing your rights, whether it's from the ACLU or IDP or like Angela's organization, letting people know how they can protect themselves. This is especially important with respect to ICE, because if they get into your home, and even if the person that they're looking for, that they have a warrant for, isn't there, they can pick up people who are in the home that they don't have a warrant for. So when they were doing raids a couple weeks ago, 10% of the people who they picked up weren't people that they had warrants for. They got into the house, they got into the building, and picked up other people. So just a quick piece of practical advice: if they come to your door and they say that the police and we have a warrant for this person, are they inside? And everybody in the home knows that person has an order, and there might be people in the house that don't have status, is to actually ask that person to go outside by themselves. I know that's really hard, but it protects everybody else in the house by not letting them in. So, yeah, thanks.
Could I just add again that issue about ICE raids? If ICE comes knocking on your door, you do not have to open the door. They typically have these administrative immigration warrants. It only permits a consensual entry. So they will knock on the door if they're knocking and not breaking down the door. They will say, police, policia. You don't have to open the door. Anybody in that house doesn't have to. They can only come in upon consent. Once you open the door, they may just push their way in. They may point their weapons at you. Gee, can I come in? That is not a consensual entry. I think we can all agree. You can say, do you have a warrant? They'll say, yes, we have a warrant. Is it a court order? Is it a judicial warrant? Slide it under the door. Show it to me in the window. If it's not, and they'll say that. We've heard of stories recently where in Queens, they were knocking on the door, said, slip the papers under the door. They refused. They waited outside for 2 hours, and then they left. You know, again, keep your door closed. If they do come in or somehow gain entry, once you do not have to answer any questions. I have palm cards outside in English and Spanish that Latino Justice has created that kind of has these tips. You don't have to answer questions because once they know your name, once they know your date of birth or place of birth, they can determine whether you have legal status or not. And that is then the basis for them to arrest you and initiate deportation proceedings. They are now even going around with mobile fingerprint units so that even at the scene, they'll fingerprint you and run your print. So don't open that door. You are well within your constitutional rights. And again, the Constitution applies to everyone, irrespective of status.
I just have one quick follow-up on the fingerprint. Is that the machine? We know that they were doing that in New Orleans a number of years ago. Is that happening here in the city?
There are now reports that they are utilizing that, bringing these mobile, I forget the acronym, mobile fingerprint units. And they'll do it right there.
Yeah. Thank you. And then also we have also Know Your Rights in English and in Spanish, a one-sheeter as well.
And and just to piggyback on everything that was just said, before you leave, please make sure that you pick up the resources that these organizations have brought because they're vital. And Jose even got us delivered the pocketbook Constitutional Rights that you can actually carry with you, and they're outside. So at the end of this event, make sure you know these organizations, you know these individuals, and then you pick up the resources that have been brought here for you. So with that, and thank you so much, let's hear from the audience. You just have to raise your hand. And again, the acoustics are great here, but because of the recording, I ask that you speak into the mic. Anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Hi, Anthony.
Can we just?
Before we start?
Yeah. So I just conferred with Jose. You know, as soon as I found out that this was being taped, I just figured that I'd throw out there, if you have a specific issue relating to your specific case, my advice to you as an attorney, and Jose also agrees, that you don't broadcast it. And again, it's being taped. This is for your protection and confidentiality. So maybe just meet with one of the attorneys afterwards if it's a specific situation. Thank you.
Yes, and I want to add that and thank you so much for saying that. If you have a question, thank you. There's a reason why the camera is still and is behind. You don't have to state your name, and you don't have to turn around.
Not a specific question for my case, but I was asked early on if I can ask this question. Individuals who are green card holders, permanent residents, I don't know if the new guidelines are specifically clear as to what rights or not, or how they may be affected. Could anyone speak briefly to that fact?
I mean, I can start, but I definitely invite my colleagues at the table to jump in and include anything else. So, the term that is used in the executive order is the term alien. An alien is anyone who is not a U.S. citizen. Now, today, as a green card holder, if you are placed in deportation proceedings because of a past conviction, you still have the statute that will protect you. When you go into court, your attorney will hopefully argue vigorously your right to stay based on, let's say, for example, if you have the right to a 212C waiver, which would waive that conviction and allow you to stay. That still stands. But the concern is that the apparatus is being created in such a way that people will accidentally, or not so accidentally, get ensnared and may find themselves already deported, and down to even potentially US citizens. So while on the one hand, yes, by law you're protected, in reality, we do have great concerns that these broad discretions can place someone who's a legal immigrant or even potentially a US citizen in detention and deportation. And I'm speaking specifically to Section 5A through G in the executive order that has to do with interior enforcement. And there are a couple of kind of subclauses there that say, number one, an immigration agent can place an alien in removal proceedings if they suspect that they've been involved in criminal activity, or if they think they are a danger to to national security. I mean, the first thing that came in my mind was if you've been involved in a protest, for example. Now, it is, our understanding is that it is geared towards the concept of, as an undocumented person, you have been engaged in the criminal activity, and they're criminally understanding you as being undocumented. That's what we understand as the intent, but the immigration agent may not necessarily see it that way and take a broader approach.
Thank you.
I just want to add a couple of things on that point. Just to clarify, did you mean all green card holders or green card holders from the 7 countries in the?
I think probably for the
Yeah.
green card holders in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. So, so everything that she said, and so I just want to take a step back. How many of you have heard that Obama deported 2.5 million people while he was in office? Yeah? Okay. How do you think he was able to do that? He was able to do that because of a program that Trump wants to reintroduce called Secure Communities. So up until a few years ago, ICE was, the New York City was honoring the ICE detainers that Jose mentioned. And it's only a couple years ago that ICE is now out of Rikers and that we're not handing over that many people. The way that this apparatus was built is it was seamless, right? So that somebody would get arrested, the jail would honor the detainer, and people would get deported. Some of the cities are pushing back, but that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a lot of other pressure now from the administration to get cities and to go harder after this. And then another thing on your point, which she mentioned, is that so under Obama in the past few years, he announced what's called the Priority Enforcement Program, which meant that you weren't a priority for deportation, not that you were completely safe, but you could generally assume that they weren't going to go after you if you hadn't committed a serious felony or a specific type of crime. So they weren't technically, they weren't supposed to just be going after somebody who was out of status on their student visa, who had overstayed their student visa, for example. That doesn't mean that didn't happen. We had clients that happened to, but as a general rule, as a general practice, that wasn't happening. So now, under Trump, basically anybody and everybody, and like she said, it's very broad, anybody who's suspected of being involved in criminal activity. And that's why what Yatsiri said is so important, because people are literally afraid to go out of their homes. They are literally afraid to say goodbye to their children because any sense of safety that they might have had in the past is gone, especially with this ICE who are saying like, oh, the shackles are off, we can do our job now.
And just back on the green card, we are telling everyone who has a green card, who wants to renew their green card or apply for citizenship, that to please, even more now than ever, to go to a reputable organization like ours or like any of those on the table who would do that kind of service, or an immigration lawyer that experience, because now if we see anything, I mean, we may make the determination, you know what, in your case, even though it normally wouldn't be a problem, we're gonna ask to wait 30 days before we apply for citizenship, because we wanna kind of see what's happening.
And I would just add, even that, Angela, would you agree, even green card holders traveling?
Oh, I'm sorry,
If you have a prior criminal history, even if it was 10, 20 years ago, you should think twice about traveling. You have you have some type of status and you can travel, there are limitations, but if you have an old criminal conviction, even 10, 20 years ago, do not be surprised if you come back and they're gonna detain you or question you,
No, this is, thank you for saying that. That was one of our frustrations as an organization, because one of the ways in which people were getting deported under Obama is that they had been spending their whole lives traveling back and forth as green card holders to their country of origin, had an old conviction from when they were 19 years old. It never was an issue. And then they would come back under the Obama administration and then be placed in deportation proceedings. Now, in some cases, it was like, okay, you're placed in deportation proceedings, you get yourself a really excellent lawyer, and you might win your case. But in many cases, that wouldn't happen, and then that person would be deported. So now we absolutely are we pretty much tell everybody who has any kind of past interaction with the criminal justice system to not travel. Secondly, I really, really want to stress, and I want this to be on video, the things that are considered crimes under immigration for criminal purposes, or for state law, many of them are very minor. Some of them are things that I think you and I would be like, that's criminalized? Like selling videos on a blanket in the subway. A lot of walking in the park after 10 p.m. and you get arrested and ticketed for that. I mean, these are things that, when we think about our system, there are many things that we did 50 years ago that just were not criminalized. These are human activities. And then the enforcement of those criminalized human activities that don't do any harm are enforced in particular areas and towards particular people. So,
Thank you. We have 3 minutes. Are there any pressing questions? Because, yes, do you have a question? I'm gonna ask you to speak into the mic. We can hear you, but for the sake of the taping. I'm gonna ask the panelists to quickly, if you're giving this 5 seconds after answering this question, say an action item that you want to make sure you want to leave with our audience today.
So I'm concerned about the idea. I've heard statements made that entering the country, how should I put it, inappropriately, if I may, is without going through the due process that's required for entering the country, is a crime in and of itself. I've heard some people argue that, and that just by entering the country and being here as an undocumented immigrant, that you have already committed a crime. Putting that aside, if you can be detained under suspicion of committing a crime, isn't that suspension of habeas corpus? Isn't that unconstitutional in and of itself?
First point, entering without inspection or without status is not a crime. It is a civil violation, 1. 2, yes, unless suspicion, again, this is under the executive orders, Trump has expanded this to any suspicion of criminal activity. Reasonable minds will differ as to what that means. I think, and again, where you will see civil rights lawyers as folks going to be picked up and detained, fighting this on a case-by-case basis. We're waiting to see what Department of Homeland Security, they've issued guideline memos. We'll see how those are implemented. But again, the mere suspicion, what's the evidence? Is it a reasonable suspicion? Is there evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, as those of us who've engaged in criminal practice? Again, there are a lot of questions. As you know, the young man, I think, in Seattle who had DACA, deferred action, he was picked up. Again, a group of lawyers came together and filed a petition for habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is where someone is being unlawfully detained. Their Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures is being infringed upon. So you will see habeas petitions. I think, we've been there's trainings going on. Lawyers, I think, are going to become experts on habeas corpus petitions, and we'll be fighting this in the courts. And it's going to be up to the courts really to stop and rein in this administration and any abusive and illegal practices. Doesn't mean they're not going to happen, but under our Constitution and our laws, the courts will be where we turn to relief until the next election in 2 to 4 years, right?
But,
Thank you. And Angela, I know.
But I want to add.
No, I'm going to say, Angela, you'll have the last brief comment, and then we're going to go down the
Okay,
panel.
well, just because there is one piece I want to clarify, and please jump in if I actually don't have it right. But if you enter after being deported,
Yes.
then that's a crime that is considered a felony and can bring 5 years in jail. Now, in that case, you would think that you would get a free court-appointed criminal defense attorney, right?
Right.
I hope.
No,
I
you
don't
would
know.
get a public
Okay,
defense.
you would get
but
public
still
for that
you're
one.
facing- But what
Yeah.
it is, they either will they detain, have to serve time, and then they're going to deport you yet again.
Right, exactly. And then the second piece that I want to add is, what is the number one reason why people come back to the United States after having been deported?
Family.
Family. But when I ask this to people that aren't as familiar with the day-to-day of immigrants, they say, well, because they don't like their country. So I guess that's my final word.
One action thing that I think everybody that's within your power to take is to know your rights and to share that information as widely as possible. Just because it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting your community. And I'll leave it at that.
And before this goes down, one action is March 9th, 26 Federal Plaza, 9 a.m. We are doing a solidarity rally for a member of our community who's going in for his check-in. He now wants to remain nameless, but he is someone who's married to a U.S. citizen, has a U.S. citizen child. He committed one crime many years ago, not a violent crime. He has been going into his check-in every year. He has been working, he's been lawful, and this is the first time under Trump, and so we're going to be there to show our solidarity peacefully, so that hopefully he does not get deported in this check-in. So please come.
I just want to echo what was said. Inform yourself and spread the information to your community, because we have to realize the privilege that we have to be here on campus. There's a lot of people that are not able to attend school because of life circumstances, or there's a lot of people that are at work and things like that that are not able to go to these events where Know Your Rights are being held. So inform yourself and spread the information as much as you can.
I'd like to please say, report issues that you are facing, especially I know within the Muslim American community and within the various other communities that they try to marginalize, and I say try. Nobody can marginalize you, okay? We are not people that will hide in the corners, and that's what marginalization tries to do. Okay, so report issues to trusted agencies. You can certainly reach out to any of us. All of our services, I know CARE is free. Most of our services here are free. So please report issues, whether it's any kind of discrimination, whether it's a travel-related issue, whether it's a hate crime. We have to make sure that we understand what is going on and the prevalence of it, and to actually accumulate data that allows us then to push for policies on the local, state, and national level for your favor.
I wanted to end with 2 points. One of the other questions we didn't get time to talk about is what happens if you see ICE agents, and again, they wear these blue jackets with white or gold lettering, says ICE police or whatever. If you see them in your neighborhoods, if you see them outside campus, if you see them perchance trying to get into campus, United We Dream has a hotline. You can call it 1-844-363-1423, 1-844-363-1423. You can go to their website, United We Dream. Also, there's a local organization called Immigrant Defense Project, IDP.org. They also have a hotline and are collecting reports of any type of ICE, again, we call it raids, ICE immigration enforcement in our communities. Secondly, I'd be remiss, I talked about sanctuary cities, and I didn't say that we had issued a report. So if you want to learn more about sanctuary cities and policies and legalities, we have a report on our website. You can download it for free. It's in English and Spanish, latinojustice.org. And what I cited to is that New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman had issued an excellent report back in January, guidance about local authority participation in immigration enforcement and model sanctuary provisions. So if you're interested in this issue and wanting to learn more, utilize these resources. They're all free. They're available on the web. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank you again for being here to further expand on the power of really raising our voices and letting others and our neighbors know that we are supporting each other. The links to the organizations represented at this table will be sent to you. So if you RSVP either by Eventbrite or you were a walk-in today and you register and you put in your signature, you're going to get an email between today and tomorrow with the link so that immediately you can start researching the wonderful, very important services free for our community that are offered by the panelists here. And again, this event is being taped and will be a link. I will again let you know on the We Are One website, on the CCNY We Are One website. There will be a link posted at a later date so that you can share it with those that you know could really benefit from this information.